Market Mantra, Market Mantra, Market Mantra, Market Mantra, Market Mantra, Market Mantra.
Welcome to this edition of Market Mantra, in which we give you a complete update on the economic, business and stock market news of the day. I'm Arjun Chaudhary and with me is my co-anchor in Hindi, Amrish Saxena.
नमस्कार। आर्थिक खबरों के कार्यक्रम मार्केट मंत्र में आपका स्वागत है। आधे घंटे के इस कार्यक्रम में हम लाएंगे आप तक आर्थिक, व्यापारिक और शेयर बाजार की खबरें, साथ ही उन पर चर्चा भी करेंगे। चर्चा के लिए आज स्टूडियो में आमंत्रित हैं वरिष्ठ आर्थिक संपादक A.K. भट्टाचार्य। भट्टाचार्य जी, कार्यक्रम में आपका स्वागत है।
नमस्कार।
आइए कार्यक्रम की शुरुआत करते हैं अंग्रेजी में हेडलाइंस के साथ, जिसे लेकर मौजूद हैं अर्जुन चौधरी।
JP Morgan Chase will add the Indian government bonds to its benchmark emerging markets bond index. Market ended lower for the fourth session in a row, recorded its biggest weekly loss in 7 months, and rupee makes substantial gains, closed at 82 rupees and 93 paise against the US dollar.
JP मॉर्गन भारत के सरकारी बॉन्ड्स को अपने बेंचमार्क उदीयमान मार्केट बॉन्ड इंडेक्स में शामिल करेगा। शेयर बाजार लगातार चौथे दिन गिरावट के साथ बंद हुए। 7 महीनों में सबसे बड़ी साप्ताहिक गिरावट दर्ज की गई और रुपए में मजबूती दिखाई दी। $1 का मूल्य 82 रुपए 93 पैसे दर्ज किया गया।
And in our top story, JP Morgan Chase and Company confirmed that it will add the Indian government bonds to its benchmark emerging markets bond index starting from the 28th of June 2024. It is a significant move which will encourage more foreign investment in the domestic debt market. JP Morgan Chase said that 23 Indian government bonds, IGBs, with a combined notional value of $330 billion are eligible for it. All fall under the category of fully accessible for non-residents. India will have a maximum weight of 10% on the index. According to experts, inclusion could bring in over $26 billion of passive inflows into the country. On the equity side, India has been one of the top investment destinations among major emerging markets this year. The Indian government's introduction of substantive market reforms for aiding foreign portfolio investments is said to be one of the reasons behind JP Morgan's decision. Exclusion of Russia and troubles in China is another factor considered by the global debt investors to deepen bond market in India. Outside inflows in the Indian bond market have steadily risen up in the recent years. So far in 2023, foreign portfolio investors, FPIs, have invested more than 28,000 crore rupees in the country's debt market compared to an outflow of nearly 9,000 crore rupees in the same period of 2022. AKB, like we fondly call you on Market Mantra, once again, a warm welcome to you, sir.
Thank you.
Well, usually the discussion centers around FPI, FII investment into the equity market, like we will do subsequently as well. But now we're talking about the debt market, the Indian government bonds. Are these the RBI bonds that we're talking about, and will they be listed on this index, which is the markets bond index? What is the nature of this index? This indices from the 28th of June 2024 when we'll be listed, and what does it mean for it to be listed on that market, to be bought in foreign exchange as compared to FIIs, FPIs buying it in our market?
Well, there's a lot of difference, and this is something that will certainly impact India's bond market, number one. Why? Because there are right now about 23 Government of India bonds which are in different stages of flotation. And as you said, that they will be listed, these 23 Indian Government of India bonds will be listed from June 2024. And the listing process will not be in one go. It will be staggered over a period of 10 months. But going by the reactions of the bond yields, you can safely conclude that the impact will be positive in the sense that the yields have gone up, and the rupee has shown some strength in terms of appreciation of the value against the dollar. The expectation is twofold. One is that the foreign portfolio investors who right now have invested up to almost around 1.7% in sovereign bonds in India. And please remember that Indian sovereign bonds accessing the foreign portfolio investors itself is under a cap right now. So we are nowhere near reaching the cap, but right now it is 1.7%, and the expectation is that over a period of 1 year or 10 months after its listing, it might go up to 3.7%. So it will be almost double. What it might mean for Government of India's finances, to some extent, the cost of India's borrowing may come down, because when you see that more FPIs are coming in and subscribing to these bonds, and given the track record of government finances and its assessment by the foreign portfolio investors, I would imagine that the cost of Government of India's borrowing will come down, and there will be increasing demand for accessing more FPIs for meeting Government of India's borrowing needs. Now that is when we need to wear our thinking caps once again instead of the market cap, and start wondering whether up to what extent should we expose the India's sovereign bond market to the FPIs. As I said, right now it is 1.7%. It may go up to 3.7 or 4% after it is being listed, because obviously once it is listed, then naturally FPIs will also get greater enthusiasm to invest in the sovereign bonds. But it's a major change in the Indian government bond market.
AKB, the redemption of the sovereign bonds in our market, including RBI bonds, is in rupees. When we talk about amortization of the principal and interest payments, that is in rupees. If the listing is overseas in this emerging markets bond index starting from June 2024, is a redemption in foreign exchange? And what does that mean for the Government of India, even though they have two markets now to access public financing?
Well, even now, when the foreign portfolio investors up to 1.7% of India's total sovereign borrowings is subscribed to by FPIs, the redemption is in foreign exchange. What we will mean is now that the redemption will be probably the value would go up substantially from what it is today. And you might see that the Government of India's redemption liability in foreign exchange may go up. And that is why I said that once it reaches 4%, the debate will start that to what extent India's debt liabilities are also bringing along with it some foreign exchange risks.
Debt servicing in foreign exchange, because your reserves will be under risk to service these debt payments.
I mean, these will be very small amounts of money, but so I think we should not worry about it right now.
भट्टाचार्य जी, डेट मार्केट में जो भी चेंजेस हमें दिखाई देंगे इस जेपी मॉर्गन की लिस्टिंग के बाद, तो आपको इसके अनुपात में जो हमारा इक्विटी में इन्वेस्टमेंट है, और ख़ास तौर से हम विदेशी पोर्टफोलियो निवेशकों की बात करते हैं, उस पे इसका किस तरह का इम्पैक्ट दिखाई देगा?
बहुत ही इंटरेस्टिंग सवाल है आपका। जब डेट मार्केट में जब पैसा ज़्यादा आएगा, लोग डेट मार्केट में जो इन्वेस्ट करते हैं और इक्विटी मार्केट की जो इन्वेस्टमेंट करते हैं, जो एलोकेशन जो होता है वो दो कंपार्टमेंट में होता है। एक पर सेंटिमेंट अगर देखें तो अगर डेट में अगर पैसा ज़्यादा जा रहा है और इंटरेस्ट बढ़ गया है, और क्योंकि इंडियन सॉवरेन बॉन्ड्स अब इंडेक्स में आ गए हैं, तो इक्विटी में एक थोड़ा बहुत एक प्रभाव तो ज़रूर पड़ेगा, वो पॉजिटिव इम्पैक्ट होगा, क्योंकि इंडिया विल बी सीन एज अ पार्ट ऑफ ए ग्लोबल इंडेक्स, और वो मैं समझता हूँ कि एक पॉजिटिव इम्पैक्ट होगा। हालांकि जैसे मैंने कहा कि 2 कंपार्टमेंट में होता है, जो डिफरेंट बास्केट में होता है, ये नहीं कि डेट का पैसा इक्विटी में आ सकता है, इक्विटी का पैसा डेट में जा सकता है, पर पॉजिटिव इन्फ्लुएंस ज़रूर होगा।
What about what's the impact likely to be on the Reserve Bank of India's investment into US Treasury securities, their bills, notes, and bonds? Will that likely to go up, or will it fall with the success of this bond sale on their emerging market?
What the Reserve
bond
Bank of
index?
India does, a very important point, what the Reserve Bank of India does is with its investment is mainly rising out of its own surplus and treasury income and forex reserves. So I don't think that it will have any direct impact on Reserve Bank's flows into US treasuries, but certainly the fact that the Reserve Bank of India might be under less pressure in getting those Government of India bonds picked up and subscribed to in the domestic market, that pressure will be that much less, because now you are getting the FPI is coming in, and as I mentioned, that from 1.7% to 3.4% is almost doubling in terms of the volume. So that much pressure will be less of the RBI. So RBI will have a greater maneuvering room to manage its own resources.
जी, और चलते हैं शेयर बाज़ारों का हाल भी जान लेते हैं। देश के शेयर बाज़ार बढ़त को आज भी कायम नहीं रख पाए और लगातार चौथे दिन बाज़ार गिरावट के साथ बंद हुआ। बाज़ार बढ़त और गिरावट के बीच में झूलते रहे और कारोबार में उथल पुथल दिखाई दी। दिन के अंत में सार्वजनिक क्षेत्र की बैंकों और ऑटो कंपनियों ने शुरुआती बढ़त को कायम रखा, जबकि सूचना प्रौद्योगिकी, धातु और फार्मा कंपनियों के शेयर दबाव में रहे। जेपी मॉर्गन द्वारा इंडिया बॉन्ड्स को शामिल करने की घोषणा के बाद सार्वजनिक क्षेत्र की बैंकों में तेज़ खरीदारी दिखाई दी। सप्ताह के दौरान बाजार में 7 महीने की सबसे अधिक साप्ताहिक गिरावट दर्ज की गई। इस तरह 3 सप्ताह से चला आ रहा तेज़ी का दौर थम गया। सेंसेक्स और निफ्टी दोनों में लगभग 3% की गिरावट दर्ज की गई। इस सप्ताह निफ्टी बैंक इंडेक्स 3% से अधिक गिरा, जबकि निफ्टी मिड कैप में लगभग 2% की गिरावट दर्ज की गई। बाजार बंद होने के समय सेंसेक्स 221 अंक यानी 0.3% गिरकर 66,009 अंक और निफ्टी 68 अंक यानी 0.3% घटकर 19,674 अंकों पर दर्ज किया गया। विस्तारित बाजार में आज बीएससी मिड कैप इंडेक्स 0.1% गिरा, जबकि स्मॉल कैप इंडेक्स में 0.04% की तेजी दिखाई दी।
Benchmark indices have failed to sustain gains today and ended lower for the 4th session in a row. Trade remained volatile as the market seesawed between gains and losses. By the day's end, PSU banks and automobiles managed to sustain early gains, while information technology, metals and pharma remain under pressure. PSU banks saw strong buying following JP Morgan's announcement of India bond inclusion, while pharma and metals were the major sectoral losers. For the week, the market recorded its biggest weekly loss in 7 months, snapping a 3-week winning streak, with the Sensex and Nifty down around 3% each. The Nifty Bank Index was down more than 3%, while the Nifty, except PSU Bank Index, all sectoral indices posted weekly losses. At close, Sensex was down 221 points, 0.3% at 66,009, and Nifty was down 68 points, 0.3% at 19,674. In the broader market on the Bombay Stock Exchange, the mid-cap index fell by 0.1%, whereas the small-cap index appreciated by 0.04% only. In the Sensex pack of 30 companies, the shares of 13 companies appreciated, while the rest 17 declined. IndusInd Bank gained 2.9%, Maruti rose 2.3%, and SBI advanced 1.6%. On the other hand, Wipro declined 2.3%, HDFC Bank and Ultra Cement both slumped 1.5%. In sectoral indices at the Bombay Stock Exchange, only 6 sectors gained while 14 sectors logged losses. Telecom sector gained 0.49%, auto appreciated 0.29%, and capital goods 0.14%. On the other side, healthcare declined 1.3%, consumer durables fell by 0.8%, and realty lost 0.7%. The overall market breadth was a bit negative as shares of 1,747 companies appreciated and 1,779 companies declined. A total of 143 shares remained unchanged. AKB, plenty of action in the Sensex and Nifty, especially on the sell side. 1,600 points have fallen in the last three trading sessions. What is this telling you about the FII, FPI buying or rather selling interest? They were net sellers to the tune of 1,327 crores today. What is this? What kind of pattern is emerging now? Is a market likely to fall and continue falling?
Well, what we are seeing right now is a little bit of profit booking, a little bit of correction in the wake of the markets becoming too expensive. You will recall that even a few weeks ago, the talk was that the Sensex reaching 65,000 by December. Now they've already had reached a level of 66,000 plus. So what is happening is a correction and profit booking. The FPO and the private players are an important segment. They are net sellers today, but I don't think you need to focus only on the FPIs here. The domestic retail investors are also an equally strong participant in this entire game. So there's so much of froth in the market that this froth needs to settle down. So it's only a matter of time that you will see that the market valuation will come to a level where it can take the next move. Remember, there are two factors which are causing some concern to the investors. One is the trajectory of the oil prices, and two, the trajectory of the domestic retail inflation, which is creating concern on what kind of stance the Reserve Bank of India will take next month on what should be the trajectory of interest rate policy. If interest rate policy remains unchanged, probably that will be seen as a relief in the current situation, because with the elections coming, there is a tremendous pressure also that retail inflation has to be brought down to a level where it does not become an electoral issue. So therefore, the stock market is taking some sort of a step back and looking at these international, which is the oil prices, and the domestic retail inflation and interest rate, the cost of money staying elevated. So these are the two factors also contributing to the current volatility in the market. And the third, final, not a very big point, is the monsoon performance. It has made good some of the losses seen in the earlier few weeks, but still its impact on overall agricultural output is not going to be very positive, and the government is clearly showing full alertness to the need for keeping retail inflation under control.
तो भट्टाचार्य जी, आपको क्या लगता है आने वाले सप्ताहों में क्या स्थिति रहने वाली है? क्या ये उथल पुथल जारी रहेगी या आपको लगता है कि एक रेंज बाउंड मैनर से एक सर्टेन रेंज में ही मार्केट चलता रहेगा?
मुझे ये लग रहा है कि जो नेक्स्ट जो ट्रिगर जो मार्केट का आएगा वो मॉनेटरी पॉलिसी के रिव्यू के टाइम में आएगा. तब तक ये वॉलेटिलिटी उथल पुथल चलती रहेगी. अगर तेलों के दाम अगर 96 के ऊपर और भी आगे चले जाएं, या जियो स्ट्रैटेजिक जो जियो पॉलिटिकल सिचुएशन जो है उसमें अगर जो गरमाइश जो है वो और भी प्रॉब्लमेटिक समस्याजनक हो जाए, तो मैं समझता हूँ स्टॉक मार्केट को रिकवरी करने में थोड़ा और समय ले सकता है.
जी.
We saw gains in the PSU Bank Index between 3 and 6% today, depending upon whether it's small cap, mid cap, or large cap. And that's on the back of the Indian government bonds being included in the emerging market index in the US. What's the reason for that?
Well, that's the reason because the PSU banks, their exposure is the biggest in terms of to the bond market. And when that when the PSU banks the subscribe to these bonds, the largest contributor are the PSU banks. Now, when the bond yields go up, prices come down, so the PSU banks are likely to be the net winners.
So we're talking about the statutory liquidity ratio.
Absolutely.
What is imposed by RBI that they have to buy government bonds?
Remember that the SLR is only a figure, and most banks cross that figure and they put more money in there because the liquidity pressure is not very high right now. So banks prefer to keep the money in that window and raise more. And in the given situation, they are likely to be a big winner.
Briefly, how do you see the markets next week, looking at the FNO for the week? And how do you see it next week?
My sense is that the two factors, one on inflation and the other on the oil prices, will be a big contributor to the sentiment in the market. And if the bond index will probably inclusion of bond index will play a positive role and impact will be positive. So, but the volatility will be the name of the game for next week.
और रुपए का हाल भी जान लेते हैं. अंतर बैंकिंग विदेशी मुद्रा बाजार में रुपया आज $1 की तुलना में 38 पैसे मजबूत होकर 82 रुपये 75 पैसे पर बंद हुआ. उधर दुनिया की 6 प्रमुख मुद्राओं की तुलना में डॉलर की मजबूती दर्शाने वाला डॉलर इंडेक्स अंतर दिवसीय कारोबार में 105.59 पर कारोबार कर रहा था. और एशिया के अन्य बाज़ारों की हालत भी देख लेते हैं. आइए अब चलते हैं. एशिया के बाज़ारों में आज मिला जुला रुख रहा. हांगकांग शेयर बाज़ार का हैंग सेंग इंडेक्स 2.2% बढ़ा. सिंगापुर के स्ट्रेस टाइम्स इंडेक्स में 0.06% और चीन के शंघाई कंपोजिट इंडेक्स में 1.5% की बढ़ोतरी दर्ज की गई. दूसरी ओर दक्षिण कोरिया का कोस्पी सूचकांक 0.2% और जापान का निकेई 0.5% गिरा. यूरोप की केंद्रीय बैंकों द्वारा ब्याज दरों में बढ़ोतरी का संकेत मिलने के बाद वहां के शेयर बाजारों में दिन के कारोबार के दौरान मिला जुला रुख देखने को मिला. ब्रिटेन का फुट्जी 0.5% की मामूली बढ़ोतरी के साथ व्यापार कर रहा था, जबकि फ्रांस का कैक 0.4% की कमजोरी दिखा रहा था. उधर जर्मनी के डेक्स में 0.1% की गिरावट दिखाई दी.
Briefly, the European central banks are going in for higher repo rate or discount rate. What's your take? Very briefly.
Well, the inflation situation in Europe is not under control, unlike in the US. So the European central banks are very worried. So they are maintaining a tight vigil on the price situation, and which is why they are so tough on the interest rate policies, unlike in the US.
Let's have a look at the US market now. US stocks sunk the most in 6 months after a recent run-up in treasury yields. The S&P 500 plunged 1.6% and the Nasdaq 100 fell almost 2%. The two indices are on track for the worst quarter in a year. The 10-year treasury yield pushed towards 4.5%, up more than 30 basis points in just 3 weeks. A bad week on Wall Street turned dismal Thursday after the relentless surge in treasury yields sapped demand for risk assets. In the end, US stocks suffered the biggest drop in 6 months as investors recalibrate for a world where rates sit at levels not seen in a generation. The Nasdaq Composite Index slumped 1.8%, the S&P 500 slipped 1.6%, and the Dow Jones Industrial Average fell 1%. AKB, before we go into the US stock market, the US dollar index is almost 106. It's 105.51. And despite that, the rupee actually did quite well against the US dollar. It went up by 38 paise. Now, what were the reasons for this?
Well, the rupee appreciating, the appreciation today is more to do with what happened at the inclusion of India's inclusion in the bond index. It is nothing to do with the dollar index as of today. Yes, in the normal sense, yes, there would be a correlation, but today's rupee strengthening is predominantly because of India's inclusion in the JP Morgan bond index.
तो ये जो आपको रुपए की कीमत जिस तरह से आज मजबूत हो, तो आपको क्या लगता है भी ये असर चलता रहेगा या ये सिर्फ एक दिन का ही?
ये मेरे ख्याल से ये ज़्यादा दिन नहीं चलेगा, क्योंकि हमारी जो इम्पोर्ट कॉस्ट जो है, ऑयल का जो इम्पोर्ट कॉस्ट जो है, और एक्सपोर्ट्स अगर ठीक से इम्प्रूव ना करे, डिमांड फॉर डॉलर्स बढ़ती रहेगी, तो मुझे लगता नहीं है कि ये जो स्ट्रेंथनिंग ऑफ रूपी एक लॉन्ग टर्म सस्टेनेबल ट्रेंड है. ये अगले हफ्ते ही आप देखेंगे विल कम बैक टू इट्स ओरिजिनल लेवल्स.
Briefly, there seems to be a move towards the debt market in the US itself, and a move away from the equity markets. Is that going to continue? Briefly.
Well, I think what is happening right now is debt is suddenly looking a safer option. Equity is not looking little risky, given the state of the global economy, given the state of the labor market getting softer, and even though the inflation rates has come down in the US, the central bank is still very firm on not bringing down the interest rates, which is why I think this softness in debt market, the interest in debt market will be more than the equity market.
Well, let's have a look at the crude oil market now. Crude oil prices rose as concerns that a Russian ban on fuel exports could tighten global supply outweighed fears that further US interest rate hikes could dent demand. In intraday trade, Brent crude was trading up at $94.08 per barrel. West Texas Intermediate WTI crude price was also appreciated at $90.54 per barrel when reports last came in. Very briefly, how do you see oil prices moving northward with what Russia is doing right now? Is that sustainable?
No, I think what is happening is right now is that the Saudi decision to stay firm on its decision to cut oil production, and the winter season coming in when the demand naturally goes up. The Russia-Ukraine the conflagration is not seeing any resolution soon, so the demand for oil will stay high. And therefore, the prices probably will not go down, and actually there are fears that the prices, the Brent crude oil, might just even go up further higher, which is not good news for India and the Indian stock markets.
जी, और चलते हैं सराफा बाजार का हाल जान लेते हैं. मल्टी कमोडिटी एक्सचेंज में अंतर दिवसीय कारोबार में अक्टूबर में आपूर्ति किए जाने वाले सोने का मूल्य 50 रुपये घटकर 58,872 रुपये प्रति 10 ग्राम पर रहा. वहीं दिसंबर अनुबंध वाली चांदी 452 रुपये फिसल कर 73,520 रुपये प्रति किलो पर चल रही थी. वैश्विक बाजारों में न्यूयॉर्क मर्केंटाइल एक्सचेंज में सोने का मूल्य बढ़कर $1,946.70 प्रति औंस पर कारोबार कर रहा था. चांदी भी बढ़त के साथ 23,097 प्रति औंस पर कारोबार कर रही थी. भट्टाचार्य जी, सोने के मूल्य में आपको क्या लगता है, कोई आपको परिवर्तन आने वाले समय में?
देखिए, जब तक आप इक्विटी मार्केट में थोड़ी बहुत खलबल मची रहेगी, तब मैं समझता हूँ थोड़ा बहुत इंटरेस्ट गोल्ड एंड सिल्वर दोनों में ही बना रहेगा, और वो हम इस तरह वॉलेटिलिटी में देखते रहेंगे.
जी, और चलते कार्यक्रम में शामिल होने और श्रोताओं को बहुमूल्य जानकारी देने के लिए आपका धन्यवाद.
नमस्कार.
And before we close, a reminder of the headlines. JP Morgan Chase will add the Indian government bonds to its benchmark emerging markets bond index. Markets ended lower for the fourth session in a row, recorded its biggest weekly loss in 7 months, and rupee makes substantial gains, closed at 82 rupees and 93 paise against the US dollar. And that's it in this edition of Market Mantra for now. Goodbye.
Market Mantra.